So Anya's here. We're live, Anya.
All right,
So say hi, say hello.
Hello, world.
Anya's from PorterLogic. I'm gonna try and say her last name. I practiced a couple times last week when we were at work. Skomorokhova. There we go. She's got
Great job. Great job.
difficult Russian last name. But so welcome to the show here. How's everything going with you so far?
It's been really great. I've caught up with a couple of folks who I've seen over the years, and a whole bunch of new folks. A lot of really good technology out here.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's interesting to see how the show has grown a little bit since last year when I was here for a little bit. So tell us a little bit about PorterLogic for those people that don't know. What is PorterLogic?
Yeah, so we're a supply chain technology stack. So really what that means is we're helping particularly growing manufacturers, growing retailers, streamline their supply chain operations and fill the gaps between their systems. So we do this all on a low-code operations platform, and we do basically everything order to dock. But we do a lot in inventory and warehouse management. And so the way that we do it is a little bit different than what you typically see, where most people start out with a box and they try to customize the box. We actually start with the exact opposite approach, where we have everything in low code, and we have essentially a set of building blocks that acquiesce or that you build the exact workflows to match your operation. And so it's a much more flexible system that allows you to change the system to fit your work, fit your order, your operations and your work whenever your business changes, which these days it's changing all the time basically.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting system as well. I got a chance to look at it. That was just last week, right? Yeah, just last week.
It was a long week.
Yeah, well, it's like back-to-back conferences, and I know you've been going crazy all around the country, right? So, I mean, you feel it, but yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to see the system. And when you say low code, I mean, it's really just a drag and drop type of system, which I think makes it incredibly kind of efficient and flexible in that sense. So tell us a little bit about, I guess, why to go in that direction of the low code and drag and drop. I mean, what was the kind of hole in the market that made sense to do it in that way?
Yeah, so what we really typically end up seeing is, especially for more complicated, more complex projects, is you have folks who spend, traditionally in supply chain, they're doing the waterfall method, right? They're doing all of their design up front, then they go off and build, then they go test, and then they hope that by the time they go through that entire cycle, that what they initially designed was correct. And maybe in the 80s that used to work because things were slower and you could predict the future better, but it just doesn't work that way anymore. So if you think about the concepts of software development, thinking about kind of agile and lean and all of those pieces, right? You're talking about like kind of iterative development, right? You don't go off, and even in terms of how you build other software products, you don't go off and you spend a year designing and then spend 2 years building and then hoping that you are correct on the market, because the market's going to change. And so it's no different in inventory and warehousing, where you don't know how your business is going to change. You know it's going to change, and you need the tools enabled to set that up. And so that's the approach that we take, where it's a much more agile, iterative process of, let's say, standing up receiving. You're standing up receiving in a matter of weeks, and you're standing it up for kind of what you think you need now and how you think it's going to work optimally now. But let's say in 6 months that something, so something else happens, or you introduce a new product, or you're opening up new warehouses or something like that, where a different kind of process is going to work, or you need to make a tiny tweak to it. With us, it doesn't mean going back to the drawing board. It doesn't mean paying oodles of money to consultants who are the only ones who know how this black box works.
Right.
And that's where the low code comes in, which is, it's really, the things that you're doing in kind of in the very basics of the system are basically, they're very repetitive, they're very repeatable. And so really what we've done is we've abstracted that layer out, and it really becomes more of a configuration exercise and not so much of a code exercise.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, and I think it's really smart because it does give you, like you said, you don't know like when your business is going to change, and sometimes we all here through the pandemic, things can change pretty dramatically, pretty quickly. Hopefully, never like that again. But we'll see, right? But it's very volatile in a sense where things are happening all the time, and we see even here in Philly, right? We see the highway collapse, and that's like a major artery through here. So things like that can happen, and maybe you need to change your workflow in some way to be able to accommodate those different changes that we can't control. So really interesting in that sense. I mean, when you think about a user for PorterLogic, it's low code, and I saw. I mean, it's simply just a drag and drop, almost like a Visio in a sense, flowchart, right? So I mean, when you think about people in an operation reconfiguring a workflow or adding a workflow for whatever reason, I mean, who do you think is that user that's going to do that drag and drop and make those changes?
Yeah, so we've got a set of different kinds of users, and they kind of span their technical comfort and kind of in what they're good at. So, kind of on the very kind of low tech side, you've got folks in the warehouse who are pulling up PorterLogic on their scanners, and they're going
Right.
exactly through those steps, right? You might have analysts who are only looking at particular dashboards that were built for the company and built by folks who are a little bit more technically savvy. If you're a little bit more technically savvy, and let's say you're comfortable, you understand the basics of, let's say, the basics of code, or you understand,
Right.
if statements, or you understand how to, create metrics, or really kind of drag and drop and hook up, let's say KPIs or variables and things like that, then that's where you really get into, okay, you can learn the configuration side of PorterLogic, and you can start making some of those different adjustments, particularly around, if you think about how, let's say, a logic flow, or like the business logic is changing. Maybe I need to add a new category or an if-then statement and send the product in a certain direction, or I need to capture a new certain field or something like that. Those things are pretty simple to do. And then on the a little bit more advanced side is when you get into things around integrations and connections. So, for example,
Yeah.
being able to, let's say, connect to an FTP or connect to a Google spreadsheet, or we do a lot of kind of email uptakes or APIs, right? You have to understand a little bit of what that endpoint is. You have to understand some of that terminology and how, kind of, what data you should be sending to them versus what data they're going to be sending to you, and so forth. And so there's a bit of there's a bit of a spread in those kinds of users. And
Yeah.
then on the more technical side, if the company has an internal engineering or an internal IT team, then they're very equipped to handle all of those pieces. A lot of companies that we work with don't already have that built, or they're not focused on that, and so we are their support. We are their support arm for that, and we've built that into our business model, and so we're very much ready to support both kinds of customers.
Interesting. So, I mean, it sounds like, for PorterLogic, it's all about flexibility, right? I mean, it sounds like it allows you to be very flexible with that solution, and allows you to kind of quickly put something in place, even if it's just for like a temporary project or a temporary solution, and then kind of pull it back, or leave it in place permanently if it works for you, which I think is really interesting. And I think, even the low code and the drag and drop feature, I mean, I could see even like a higher level, even just like a warehouse manager, operations manager, going in there and making some changes just to be able to, maybe we have special rules on receiving this week, or we're getting some special product in, and then you want to add additional steps. It's super easy to do that from what I saw. So I think it's really interesting. So now, being on the tech side, and here at Home Delivery World, I mean, as you're walking around, and you go to a lot of conferences too, I know for sure. I don't know, when's the last time you've been home? What?
I was home yesterday.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
One
And then
day out of the month is good.
I
right?
think I packed up about 2 hours before I had to head to the airport. And
Yeah.
that's probably when you've been on the road too much. Your suitcase never actually gets put away,
Yeah.
and
yeah,
you
it's-
really
it's,
start
uh,
milking it on how close to take off you start packing. So.
Yeah. So I mean, in that sense, as you're going around to these different conferences, and even here at Home Delivery World, I mean, what kind of tech are you seeing that's exciting to you, or you think is kind of pushing through to the next kind of phase in supply chain or warehouse management?
Yeah, there's a couple different pieces. There's definitely some folks who are like us, who are starting to embrace that more flexible mindset, and a
Yeah.
lot of and frankly, a lot of customers, a lot of people, the market's really demanding that at this point, where they just can't go with the status quo. It just doesn't work for them anymore. And so things around, I personally found it interesting, some of the new tools that have come up around demand planning, and how you can make that a little bit more agile and flexible. Because when you think about, if I'm trying to plan out, my forecast for this year, well, how well can I really use the last 3 years of my forecast or what I used
Well,
to
yeah,
make?
the last 3 years especially has been a little
Exactly.
wild.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
then that's a great question. Then okay, so do I go back to like my 2018, 2019 numbers, or do I try
Yeah.
to asterisk what happened in the last 3 years, or do I just go straight across and kind of hope for the best? And so there's
Yeah.
more analytical tools and mathematical models that are doing those sorts of things now, that are just more interesting. Then there's also some more things around. So many folks I talk to, everyone's key problem is basically managing inventory. They don't know what they have, they
Yeah.
don't know how much they have, and they don't know where it is.
Yeah.
To some extent, whether whether they have their own warehouses or they're using 3PLs. It's one of those three questions, if not all of them, they're constantly trying to figure out. And so there's a number of technologies that are tackling that problem.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting, and it's such a great point too. I mean, about the inventory aspect, even from just the demand planning of the inventory to then once you get the inventory, understanding where is it located in the right place, and there are so many tools coming on board to do that, which includes PorterLogic, right, from the inventory management perspective. So really interesting stuff, and great to talk to you here at Home Delivery World. I think I see you at every conference almost, right? So, so it would definitely be. How do you get in touch with PorterLogic? I mean, if people are interested in learning more.
Yeah, so we're pretty active online. So you can follow me on LinkedIn. You can follow PorterLogic on LinkedIn. We've also got our website, PorterLogic.com. We also have a pretty sassy monthly blog that goes out.
I've been seeing that.
There may or may not be Star Wars memes in there. We're big Lego and Star Wars people, so
Okay.
I kind of take that. And then always, feel free to reach out to me as well, Anya at PorterLogic.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. I have a pretty unique last name. Pretty easy to find me on this side of the world.
Yes, yeah, definitely unique, hard to say. Definitely it's long, but yeah, you can find her easy. So definitely give her a follow, and PorterLogic as well. And those blog posts are pretty interesting, good content out there as well for just general knowledge in the supply chain space. So, Anya, thank you so much for coming by the booth and talking a little bit here today.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the invite.